Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Ken!
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, I'm Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and Warhammer is full of, let's just say, weird things. It's a universe of grim, dark suffering and never-ending war, with humans and aliens and literal demons all going at it, fist, tooth, bullet and claw. And for me, one of the most bizarre things in the Warhammer universe are the Keepers of Secrets. Greater demons and arch-representatives of the chaos god Slaanesh. Now, given that Slaanesh is the in-universe god of lust, greed, excess, pain, pleasure, perfection, and general hedonism, you'd be excused for thinking that Slaanesh-aligned models would be pretty interesting, and yeah, you wouldn't be disappointed. To the extent that I can't show you some of the older models on here because I'd get slapped on the wrist with YouTube's booby filter. Another fun thing about the Keepers is that they don't necessarily look like this. This is just one kit, and although it has a couple of admittedly very cool build options, there have been some other really weird versions of it in the past. Among them, a slightly more risque Forge World model, this cosmic horror nightmare, and this fetish club Minotaur dude. There's been over 1,000 novels written about the Warhammer universe, and many authors will have had different ideas of how to portray the Keepers. This gives a pretty good scope for kit-bashing, customized creativity if you want to create your own Keeper of Secrets, particularly if you're not a fan of the official model's price tag of £95, or $160, or $243 Now let's take a peek at the Lexicanum and see if it can give us a quick guide as to what to aim for looks-wise. Each Keeper of Secrets has a unique appearance that mirrors Slaanesh's mood at the time of its creation. Their looks can range from terrifyingly haunting but almost human to bestial, though all are tall and lithe, with long claws and limbs and a crown of horns that sprouts from their head and intoxicating eyes that look like black crystals. Okay, I think we can work with this. Tall, lithe, terrifyingly haunting but almost human. Sounds like Barbie to me. I'm going to be doing this for as cheap as I possibly can, so instead of shelling out for a legit authentic Barbie, let's go for her $8.99 bargain basement step-cousin, Dress Up Modern Girl. Barbie might have been around for 64 years and be the 8th most profitable franchise ever, but Dress Up Modern Girl lets you activate your unique charm. She's also the most elegant. And she's also really cheap, so bargain. Let's crack her out of her little cardboard prison and see what we're working with. She's got a few accessories, shoes, hair clips, bags, and I'm not really interested in that guff. I'll squirrel that away for when the twins are a bit older. I'm sure action figures will be on the cards soon enough, but they're mostly into baby dolls at the moment. Just maybe not in the way you'd think.
What are we having for dinner? You show me. Oh!
Baby is my dinner.
Baby is the dinner.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Surprisingly articulated. This should make posing pretty fun. I sketched out a couple of ideas of what I'd like it to look like. Maybe having it look like a giant automaton, like that incredible parade they had in Toulouse a few years ago, or a spooky puppet with the controls dangling above its head. It's already almost going to be 30 centimeters tall though, so maybe I should just keep it relatively simple. Let's take a look and see what's lurking under all this hair. Oh Jesus. The hair won't take paint anyway, so let's take it all off. My table is quickly looking like B-roll from a true crime miniseries. The head itself is made from a different material from the rest of the body, like soft vinyl or something, very squishy, so I need it to be stiffer, otherwise if it's squished when it's painted, the paint might crack and ruin the finished model. So instead let's remove the face and attach it to something sturdier. I realise having one of the most wholesome videos on the channel yet, where Hattie painted a pink dragon, making her childhood Warhammer dream come true, followed immediately by whatever this is, might be a bit jarring, but welcome to Midwinter Minis, baby! So the Keeper of Secrets model comes with a 100mm base, so I grabbed one from my stash. I've only been hobbying for a decade, so you end up with the weirdest spares, and I don't want to have to fill the gaps on the joints. I want it to look like a giant possessed doll, so instead of gluing from the outside, I popped off the joints that I could and added glue to the balls and sockets, and then popped them back in, and left them in the pose I wanted for a few minutes. Some joints couldn't be removed without breaking them, so I just glued them and hoped for the best. Now, while most Slaanesh models have only one breast, I'm going to skip cutting off one of this doll's boobs because, let's be honest, this video is already a bit odd. The contact points on the feet are absolutely tiny. I know that's the Barbie style and I don't want to change it, but she'll need extra stability. I drilled a hole through the underside of her foot and a matching one at the contact point on the base and drove a small screw up into her foot. She will never come off now, so let's just decorate the base with some Warhammer 40k junk to set her in universe and to stop her from looking like a Barbie on a plinth. Some random pipe should do, and I can have the other leg stepping up on this barrel. She's attached to the base, but very wobbly, so an additional point of contact should go a long way. To really lock her in, I drilled through her other foot and plunged a pin through, locking her to the barrel. Nice, way less wobbly, and it adds to the S&M Slaanesh aesthetic. I shaved off a few of the most egregious mould lines. Just because we're doing demented kids toy Warhammer kit bashing doesn't mean we should skip the boring stuff. I reckon a Kinder Egg's plastic shell would be a decent sized head for the Barbie and be nice and robust and light. No, Nessa, this isn't for you. Fine, have this instead. Oh, a dinosaur toy. Cool. On second thoughts, nah, it makes her face look way too wide. I'll have to rethink the head. While I think about that, let's jazz her up and make her more obviously a Warhammer thing. These are all of the spares I had left over from making my Demons of Slaanesh Start Collecting box, which I painted up in the most ridiculously vibrant scheme I could, by the way. I'll leave a link to that video in the description in case you want to check that out after this video. There's lots of spikes and arms and random stuff to work with. I think these chariot bits will make an interesting spiky corset style thing. I marked where I wanted to attach them on both sides to make sure I got the symmetry right, and glued them on. Fortunately, both of these plastics bond really well with superglue, so that's a plus. I was worried that Dress Up Modern Girl was going to be made from something that would be impossible to glue or paint. I also made these funky hip spikes using bits that never got used on the Exalted Chariot model. I then cut off the arms from the boss model's massive claws and glued just the spikes on like elbow blades, Guyver style. Her hands have two joined fingers in the middle, but a free index and little finger, so I snipped them off, naturally, and replaced them with the Demonette arms. They're perfect, actually, as the arm sections just look like fingers at this scale, kind of like she either has weird mutated fingers or is wearing big spiky goth rings like I used to when I was a moody teenager. Some extra spiky bits, I think from the seekers that pull the chariots, on her knees, and in a line down her shins. To ramp up the bondage vibes that literally all the other Slaanesh models have, I wrapped some cheap eBay jewellery chain around her neck, arms and thighs, using dabs of superglue to lock them in place. Right, let's sort this head out using a more traditional method, some wire wrapped up in a ball to make a vaguely head-shaped thing, stick the face to the wire, and then cover the rest of the head with layers of Milliput, a mouldable 2-part epoxy. Now, I'm not an expert sculptor by any means, and I'm not even going to try to make a perfectly smooth cranium. I've got a plan, you'll see. While the Milliput was still curing, I plunged in some of the random horn structures that I didn't use from the Slaanesh chariots. So now we've got a tall, lithe, almost human monster with a crown of horns, long limbs and claws. I think we've nailed it, to be honest. I cut the nub off the neck and stuck the head on. I added some texture to the base to make it look like rough wasteland, and also dabbed some on the pipes to make it look like caked on dirt or rust. To really sell the spikes growing out of her legs as actual growths, I painted some PVA glue around the ugly gaps, added a few drops of superglue and mushed it around with a toothpick. It kinda curdles and makes an instant gross texture. Man, this is gonna be terrifying. Let's paint her. Grey primer should make all the different plastics, metals and textured stuff react the same way to the paint I'll be using. For the skin, I'll be using these colours. Royal purple to get in all the shadowy areas, building up through Gomorrah lilac as a mid-tone, blue lilac as a light-facing area highlight, and with a tiny touch of squid pink added for the most extreme highlights. On a model this size, an airbrush is a must really, it just makes such quick work of everything. And by the way, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know I followed a lot of your advice and stopped mixing paints in the cup of my airbrush, instead mixing them and thinning them before I put them in, and I've experienced way fewer clogs doing this, so thanks for the helpful comments everyone. The body obviously has precisely zero texture or details, apart from the weird sculpted on underwear, so I'm going to airbrush on some subtle spine, shoulder blade and rib details too. This paint is very thin, so even though it looks like it's really bright when it goes on, it'll dull down quite a lot. I also used this bright highlight colour to dry brush the growths, spikes and claws to quickly bring out some detail, and then I added some thinned Magos purple contrast paint to tone them slightly differently from the rest of the skin. I then added some Black Legion contrast paint to that Magos purple and then airbrushed it onto the tips of the horns and spikes and claws to make them look a bit darker towards the tips. And I also used this to add some definition to the few details the model's body has, like the fingers and toes. I then used the same mix to freehand some shadow details on the underside of the airbrushed on musculature highlights. And also painted on some creepy vein details to make the large, smooth body parts a bit more interesting. Painting veins is pretty easy. Just imagine you're painting a dead tree, a bit thicker at the bottom, branching out into smaller, jaggedy shapes. Just try not to overthink it. And now let's make that bulbous, lumpy head look a bit more intentional by manually shading the creases and crevices. I then switched to the lightest skin colour highlight and picked out a few of the top facing edges of the veins just to add a bit of a 3D impression. If I'd wanted these to look like cracks instead of veins, I'd have highlighted the underside instead of the top side, as that would be where the light would have reflected. Once you get into the zone of stuff like this, you can whip through it pretty quickly. For the bone parts, I gave them a base coat of this nice driftwood brown paint, and then a shade with thinned Cygor brown, which should tone everything, but also settle into the recesses and make them a bit darker. I then carefully dry brushed them with a lighter bone colour. I then went back to the Cygor brown contrast paint to tint the chains, and when that was dry, I could do a more controlled dry brush with tin bits paint just to catch the outer edges, and then using a brighter silver, just a tiny touch. Oh, I think I didn't wipe off quite enough paint on that one. Anyway, that mess fixed up, the ear jewellery and crown got a base coat of gold, a recess shade with Agrax Earthshade, and then a final touch on the more prominent bits with the same gold, but with a little bit of that bright silver from the chains mixed in. I wasn't too sure how I wanted to paint the face, specifically the eyes, so I asked the channel supporters on Patreon, and thankfully they didn't tell me to paint her eyes just like the legit Barbie doll. Instead, the most common request was for black, demonic, shiny eyes, which is fortunate because A, that matches the description from the Lexicanum, and B, it's so much easier than repainting a doll's factory makeup. I blocked in the rough eye shape with black, and tidied up with the skin highlight colour to cut back into the black. I also added a few face highlights while I had this paint out too, why not? I then added progressively lighter greys and an arch on the top of the eye and in the bottom left, finishing with just a couple of tiny dots of white and a coat of gloss varnish. I also painted on some teeth while I was at it, not worrying about accidentally painting onto the lips too, because I can just fix that with the purple skin colours after. The base got painted black, a little airbrush of a muddy brown colour, and the pipes got sponged with some desaturated warm creamy colours, and then a dry brush with silver. Once that was all dry, I gave the pipes a pretty rough and broad application of thinned down, dirty down rust, and then a more focused, smaller layer using the same stuff but not diluting it this time, so the effect becomes more intense. I dry brushed the texture on the base again, black groomed it, and I reckon that's it.
Barbie, the keeper of secrets, a twisted reflection of the beloved childhood toy, she towers above her demon kin, an uncanny embodiment of innocence turned malevolence. Crowned with wickedly curved horns that pierce the heavens, adorned with gilded finery, her diadem a stark contrast to the horrors she conceals. Yet beneath her visage of beauty lies true terror, razor-sharp claws and teeth, deftly ready to rend both flesh and sanity from the unwary. Barbie has become a harbinger of doom for the unprepared souls she ensnares in her web of temptation.
I hope you've enjoyed this fun little kit bash video as much as I have making it. If you like this kind of thing, no doubt you've already seen the video where I make the boring Chaos Land Raider model a bit more interesting, let's just say. I don't know if you've noticed, but this video doesn't have a sponsor, and it's thanks to the amazing, kind, beautiful, highly intelligent and witty supporters we have over on Patreon who help us make these videos for the whole tabletop community to enjoy. If you fancy joining them and actively supporting Midwinter Minis, you can from just £2 a month. On top of helping us, you get access to our Discord server, behind the scenes stuff, and you can realistically sway the decisions we make in videos. There are only a few votes in the I-style choice after all. New signups also get a shout out in a video when they join, so special thanks to this week's newest members: Buster258, XP Grog, The Proctai Cymru, The Good One, Shane Weiland, A Very Filthy Zeno, Henry Zervis, Minsby, and Tyler Wenzel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.